My stepmom thought she could erase me from my own family. She thought her cruel words would break me forever. She thought she knew exactly what my father's will contained. She thought her perfect children would inherit everything. She thought I was just a burden from his past marriage, but what she didn't know was that Dad had been planning something for years, and when the lawyer read his will, her smug smile disappeared forever. My name is Maya, and I'm 17 years old. This is the story of how my stepmother's hatred led to the most shocking family revelation of my life. It all started 5 years ago when my dad, Robert Sterling, married Helena Blackwell. Helena was a successful real estate agent with 2 kids from her previous marriage, Austin, who was 15, and Chloe, who was 13. From the moment Helena walked into our house, she made it clear that I didn't belong in her vision of the perfect family. "Maya, darling," she said on her first day living with us, her voice sweet as honey but her eyes cold as ice. "We need to discuss some changes around here." I was 12 years old, still grieving my mother who had died 2 years earlier. I looked up from my coloring book hopefully, thinking maybe she wanted to include me in redecorating or planning family activities. "What kind of changes?" I asked innocently. Helena sat down across from me at the kitchen table, smoothing her designer dress. "Well, this house needs to reflect our new family dynamic. Your father and I have decided that Austin needs the bigger bedroom. You know, the one you're currently using, since he's older and needs more space for his studies." My heart sank. That was my mother's old craft room that Dad had converted into my bedroom after she died. It still had some of her paintings on the walls. "But that's my room," I whispered. "Mom's paintings are in there." "Oh, sweetheart," Helena said with fake sympathy, "it's time to let go of the past. We're building a new future together." That was just the beginning of my systematic erasure from the Sterling family. Over the next few years, Helena methodically removed every trace of my mother from our home. She claimed the family photos made her uncomfortable and stored them in the basement. She redecorated every room in the house, choosing colors and furniture that reflected her taste, not the warm, artistic style my mother had loved. Most painfully, she convinced Dad to donate my mother's art supplies and easel to charity, saying I was too young to appreciate them properly. Those supplies were the last physical connection I had to Mom, who had taught me to paint before she got sick. Helena enrolled Austin and Chloe in expensive private schools, while insisting I would be more comfortable in public school. She threw elaborate birthday parties for her children, while somehow always forgetting mine. When I reminded Dad about my birthday, Helena would quickly organize a small, half-hearted celebration that felt more like an obligation than a celebration. But the worst part wasn't what she did, it was how she did it. Always with a smile, always when Dad wasn't around, always followed by, "Oh, Maya, you're being so sensitive," whenever I tried to complain. Dad was completely under her spell. He was so grateful to have found love again after losing Mom that he couldn't see how Helena was slowly pushing me to the margins of my own family. The breaking point came when I was 16 and started planning for college. I had been working on my portfolio for months, hoping to get into an art school like my mother had always dreamed I would. Mom had been an artist before she died, and she'd started a college savings account for me when I was born. One evening at dinner, I excitedly shared my plans with the family. "I've been looking at art schools," I announced, barely able to contain my enthusiasm. "The Art Institute has an amazing program, and I think I have a real chance of getting in with my portfolio." Dad smiled proudly. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Your mother would be so proud. She always said you inherited her artistic talent." But Helena's expression darkened at the mention of my mother, as it always did. "Art school?" she said with a dismissive laugh. "Maya, honey, don't you think you should be more realistic? Art isn't exactly a stable career path." "But Mom was an artist," I protested, "and there are lots of successful careers in art. Graphic design, illustration, museum, curation." "Your mother is gone," Helena interrupted sharply. "And we need to think about practical matters, like finances." Dad looked confused. "What do you mean? Maya's college fund should cover most of her tuition. Sarah was very careful about saving for her education." Helena exchanged a meaningful look. with Austin, and I felt my stomach drop. Actually, Robert, Helena said carefully, we need to talk about that college fund. What about it? Dad asked. Well, Austin has been accepted to Yale, she said, beaming at her son. It's such a prestigious opportunity, but the tuition is quite expensive. We weren't prepared for the full cost. I watched in horror as the pieces fell into place. You want to use my college fund for Austin? I asked quietly. It would just be temporary, Helena said quickly, not meeting my eyes. Austin's education at Yale is crucial for his future. You're still young, Maya. You have time. To save up for college later? That money is mine, I said, my voice getting stronger. Mom saved it specifically for my education. Helena's mask slipped slightly. Your mother isn't here to make decisions anymore, Maya. This family has to make choices based on current realities. I looked desperately at Dad, waiting for him to defend me, to protect my mother's wishes. But instead, he sighed deeply. Maybe Helena has a point, he said quietly. Yale is an incredible opportunity for Austin, and Maya, community college is a perfectly good option to start with. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. My own father was choosing his stepson over me, choosing Helena's family over his own daughter. I can't believe this, I whispered, tears starting to flow. You're giving away Mom's money she saved for me, to pay for Austin's school? Maya, don't be selfish, Helena scolded. Family means making sacrifices for each other. But I am family, I shouted, standing up from the table. Helena looked around at Dad, Austin, and Chloe, then back at me with cold eyes. Are you, though? She said quietly, her voice like ice. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad didn't defend me. Austin smirked. Chloe looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. I ran to my tiny bedroom, the small guest room Helena had moved me to, and sobbed until I had no tears left. Austin got his Yale education funded by my mother's sacrifice. I enrolled in community college and got a part-time job to pay for it myself. Things got progressively worse over the next year. Helena became bolder in her cruelty, especially when Dad traveled for business. She accidentally donated my art supplies to charity, claiming she thought they were old junk. She gave my mother's jewelry to Chloe as early inheritance gifts, saying they would just collect dust in my room. She even convinced Dad to sell my mother's car, the one I was supposed to inherit on my 18th birthday, to help pay for Austin's Yale expenses. Every time I complained to Dad, Helena was there with an innocent smile and a reasonable explanation. I was being dramatic. I was living in the past. I needed to think about the family as a whole. Dad wanted peace in his house so desperately that he always took her side. But everything changed on the night of my 17th birthday. A birthday that Helena had once again forgotten. I came home from my job at the local coffee shop to find the house full of people. Helena was throwing a surprise party for Chloe, celebrating her acceptance into an expensive private art camp. The same type of program I had begged to attend for years, but was told we couldn't afford. Oh, Maya, Helena called out when she saw me in my coffee-stained work uniform. Perfect timing. Could you help clean up and maybe refill the snack bowls? The room full of Chloe's friends stared at me like I was the hired help. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. It's my birthday, I said quietly. Helena's smile faltered for just a moment. Of course it is, dear. We'll do something small for you. Tomorrow. Tonight is Chloe's special moment. Something inside me finally snapped. No, I said, my voice getting stronger. Today is my birthday. The birthday you've forgotten for the 4th year in a row, and you're using my house to celebrate your daughter instead. Maya, Helena's voice had a warning tone. Don't make a scene in front of the guests. Your guests? I laughed bitterly. These aren't my friends. These people don't even know I live here because you've been erasing me from this family since the day you moved in. The room went silent. Everyone was staring at us now. That's enough, Helena hissed, standing up. Go to your room, now. This is my house too, I shouted. My mother lived here. She chose the paint colors you covered up. She planted the garden. You destroyed. She saved money for my education that you stole. Your mother is dead, Helena screamed. And the entire room gasped. She paused, looking around at all the shocked faces, then seemed to decide she didn't care who heard what came next. You want to know the truth, Maya? Your father pities you. We all do. You're a constant reminder of his dead wife. And frankly, everyone is tired of pretending otherwise. The words felt like physical blows. I couldn't breathe. You will never be family, Helena continued, her voice getting crueler with each word. Austin and Chloe are Robert's real children now, the ones he chose to love and support. You're just the burden he got stuck with from his first marriage. Tears were streaming down my face, but I was frozen in place. You're pathetic, clinging to a dead woman's memory and making everyone else miserable with your constant need for attention. Face the facts, Maya. Nobody wants you here. That's when I heard it. A sharp intake of breath from the hallway. Was standing there in his business suit, his briefcase dropped on the floor. His face was pale with shock, and his eyes were filled with horror. He had heard every single word. The silence in the room was deafening. Helena's cruel words hung in the air like poison, and everyone was staring at my father, who stood frozen in the hallway with his briefcase at his feet. I had never seen Dad look like that before. His face was white as paper, his hands were shaking, and his eyes were filled with a mixture of shock, horror, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Rage, maybe? Helena turned around to see what everyone was looking at, and when she spotted Dad, the color drained from her face instantly. "Robert," she stammered, her voice suddenly small and shaky. "How long have you been standing there?" Dad didn't answer immediately. He walked slowly into the living room, his eyes never leaving Helena's face. The guests were all looking around awkwardly, sensing the tension but not sure what to do. "Long enough," Dad said finally, his voice eerily calm. "Long enough to hear. You tell my daughter that she'll never be family. Long enough to hear you say that everyone is tired of pretending to care about her. Long enough to hear you call her pathetic." Helena tried to force her fake smile back into place. "Robert, honey, you're taking this out of context. Maya was having one of her episodes again, and I was just trying to..." "Episodes?" Dad's voice got dangerously quiet. "Is that what we're calling it when my daughter rightfully points out that you forgot her birthday for the 4th year in a row?" I watched in amazement as my father transformed before my eyes. For 5 years, I had watched him make excuses for Helena, prioritize her feelings over mine, and choose her version of events over my truth. But now, something had shifted. "Everyone out," Dad said to the room full of teenagers. "Party's over." Chloe's friends scrambled to gather their things, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding around them. Within minutes, the house was empty except for our family. Helena tried again, her voice taking on the sweet, manipulative tone she always used to get Dad on her side. "Robert, sweetheart, you know how Maya can be dramatic. She was making a scene in front of all of Chloe's friends, and I was just trying to calm the situation down. By telling her she'll never be family?" Dad asked. "By saying everyone pities her? By calling her a burden I got stuck with?" Austin, who had been smirking throughout the entire confrontation, finally spoke up. "Dad, maybe we should all just calm down. Mom was stressed about the party, and..." "Don't," Dad said sharply, turning to look at Austin. "Don't call me Dad. I'm not your father, and after what I just witnessed, I never want to be." Austin's mouth fell open in shock. Helena gasped. "And you," Dad continued, turning back to Helena. "How long has this been going on? How long have you been treating Maya like this when I'm not around?" "Robert, I have never..." "Don't lie to me," Dad interrupted. "I heard enough tonight to know this isn't the first time you've said these things to her. My daughter was crying. She was broken. That doesn't happen overnight." I stood there in amazement, watching my father finally see through Helena's manipulation. For 5 years, I had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was happening, I felt numb. Helena realized her sweet act wasn't working, and her mask began to slip completely. "Fine," she said, her voice turning cold. "You want the truth, Robert? Your daughter has been nothing but a problem since the day I moved in. She's constantly whining about her dead mother. She refuses to accept our new family, and she makes everyone uncomfortable with her constant need for attention. Her dead mother was my wife, Dad said quietly. The woman I loved for 15 years. The woman who gave me the most precious gift in my life, Maya. And you've been trying to erase every trace of her from our home. I was trying to help you. Move on, Helena snapped. You were stuck in the past, clinging to a ghost, and it wasn't healthy for anyone. So you decided to destroy my daughter's connection to her mother? You gave away Sarah's jewelry, donated her art supplies, sold her car. You used Maya's college fund, money her mother saved for her education, to pay for Austin's Yale tuition. Helena's eyes flashed with anger. Austin is brilliant. He deserved that opportunity. Maya can go to community college like millions of other kids. Maya deserved the opportunity her mother worked and saved to give her, Dad said, his voice getting louder. But you convinced me to take it away from her and give it to your son instead. Because Austin is family, Helena shouted. Austin and Chloe are your children now. Maya is just... She paused, seeming to realize she was about to say something she couldn't take back. Just what? Dad asked dangerously. Just a reminder of your past that you need to let go of. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Dad stared at Helena for a long moment, and I could see years of manipulation and lies finally becoming clear to him. Get out, he said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Take your children and get out. Tonight. Helena laughed nervously. Robert, don't be ridiculous. This is our home. We can work through this. This was never your home, Dad said. This was Sarah's home, the home she decorated, the home she filled with love, the home she shared with me and Maya. And you've spent 5 years trying to destroy every trace of that love. You can't just throw us out, Helena protested. We have nowhere to go. You have your real estate business, your savings, and your children's father's child support. You'll figure it out. Austin stood up angrily. This is insane. You can't. Choose her over us. Dad turned to look at Austin with an expression I had never seen before. Pure disgust. I'm not choosing Maya over you, Dad said. I'm choosing my daughter over the people who have been systematically abusing her for 5 years while I was too blind to see it. Abusing? Helena scoffed. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? Is it? Dad pulled out his phone and started scrolling through something. Because I just spent the last 10 minutes thinking about all the times Maya tried to tell me something was wrong, all the times she came to me crying, and I dismissed her concerns because you convinced me she was being dramatic. He looked up from his phone, and his eyes were filled with pain and regret. Maya's birthday parties that kept getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. Maya's artwork that kept mysteriously getting thrown away. Maya's friends who stopped coming over because they weren't welcome. Maya's college fund that somehow became Austin's Yale tuition. With each item on the list, Helena's face grew paler. You isolated her, undermined her, and made her feel like an outsider in her own home. And I let you do it because I was so grateful to have someone in my life that I ignored what was happening to my daughter. Dad walked over to me and put his hands on my shoulders. I could see tears in his eyes. Maya, I am so sorry. I failed you. I failed your mother. I let this woman come into our home and try to erase the most important people in my life. I started crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. After 5 years of feeling invisible and unwanted, my father was finally seeing me again. I forgive you, Dad, I whispered. Helena was starting to panic now. Robert, please, think about this rationally. We have a life together. We're married. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage over one argument. This wasn't one argument, Dad said, still holding my shoulders. This was 5 years of emotional abuse directed at my child. 5 years of you systematically trying to destroy her self-worth and her connection to her mother. I never meant... Yes, you did, Dad interrupted. Every single thing you did was calculated and intentional. You knew exactly what you were doing. He walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up one of the few remaining photos of my mother that Helena hadn't managed to hide or throw away. Sarah died when Maya was 10 years old, he said, looking at the photo. She made me promise that I would always protect our daughter, always put her first, always make sure she knew how much her mother loved her. He turned to face Helena with the photo in his hands. I broke every single one of those promises. But I'm not breaking them anymore. Helena tried one last desperate manipulation tactic. "What about Chloe?" she said, her voice breaking. "She's just a child. She loves you like a father. Are you really going to abandon her?" Dad's expression softened slightly when he looked at Chloe, who had been sitting quietly in the corner throughout the entire confrontation. "Chloe is a good kid," he said gently, "and I'm sorry she got caught up in this. But I can't continue to be married to someone who has spent years trying to destroy my daughter." He turned back to Helena. "You have 1 hour to pack whatever you can carry. I'll have the rest of your things sent to wherever you're staying. My lawyer will be in touch about divorce proceedings." "Divorce?" Helena's voice was shrill now. "Robert, you can't be serious. We signed a prenup, but we've been married for 5 years. I'm entitled to half of everything." Dad smiled for the first time all evening, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Actually, Helena, you might want to read that prenup more carefully, especially the clause about what happens if the marriage ends due to abuse or neglect of my existing children." Helena's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you get nothing. The house stays with Maya and me. The business stays with me. Your access to all accounts gets frozen tonight." "That's impossible," Helena protested. "My lawyer is very thorough," Dad said calmly. "Sarah insisted on that prenup clause before she died. She was worried about exactly this scenario. Someone coming into Maya's life and trying to take advantage of our family." I stared at Dad in amazement. Even from beyond the grave, my mother was still protecting me. Helena was speechless for a moment. Then she turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This is all your fault," she hissed. "You manipulative little brat. You turned him against me." Before I could respond, Dad stepped between us. "Don't you ever speak to my daughter again," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Security cameras have been recording this entire conversation. If you ever come near Maya or contact her in any way, I'll have you arrested for harassment." Security cameras? I looked around in confusion and noticed small devices I had never seen before mounted in the corners of the room. Dad saw my expression and explained. "I had them installed last month. I was starting to suspect something wasn't right, but I needed proof." Helena grabbed Austin and Chloe and headed for the door. "This isn't over, Robert. My lawyer will be in touch." "Good luck with that," Dad called after her. "Make sure you bring the recordings of tonight's conversation. I'm sure any judge would love to hear how you feel about my daughter." The front door slammed, and suddenly the house was quiet for the first time in 5 years. Dad and I stood there, in silence for a moment, both of us still processing what had just happened. "Dad," I said finally, "what happens now?" He pulled me into the biggest hug he had given me in years. "Now we start over, sweetheart. Just you and me, the way it should have been all along." "What about college? What about Mom's college fund?" Dad pulled back to look at me, and I could see determination in his eyes. "Austin is going to pay back every penny of that money, even if I have to sue him for it. And Maya, there's something else you need to know." "What?" Dad walked over to his briefcase and pulled out a large manila envelope. "Your mother didn't just leave you a college fund. She left you much more than that." He handed me the envelope with shaking hands. "Maya, your mother was a very smart woman. She had a life insurance policy that I never touched, and she had some investments that have been growing for the past 7 years. This house, the business, everything is going to be yours when you turn 18. I stared at the envelope in shock. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your mother made sure you would never have to depend on anyone else for your future. And Helena never knew about any of it." My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope and saw the documents inside. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds. The numbers were staggering. "Dad, this says..." I paused, trying to process what I was reading. "This says there's over $3 million in these accounts. Your mother was very good with money," Dad said with a sad smile. "She wanted to make sure that no matter what happened to me, you would always be taken care of." I sat down heavily on the couch, still staring at the papers. Helena never knew about this. No one knew except me, your mother, and the lawyers. Helena married me thinking she would get half of everything I owned. She had no idea that the most valuable assets were already set aside for you. I started laughing, and once I started, I couldn't stop. After 5 years of being told I was worthless, after having my college funds stolen, after being made to feel like I didn't belong in my own family, I was actually rich. Maya, there's more, Dad said gently. Your 18th birthday is next month. I know. The house transfers to your name on your birthday. Legally, you'll be Helena's landlord if she ever tries to come back. I looked around at the house that Helena had spent 5 years trying to make her own. The house where she had erased every trace of my mother. The house where she had made me feel like an unwanted guest. Soon it would legally be mine. Dad, what if we redecorated? I said suddenly. What do you mean? I mean, what if we brought Mom back? What if we put her pictures back up, repainted the walls the colors she chose, planted her garden again? Dad's eyes filled with tears. I think your mother would love that. We spent the rest of the night going through boxes in the basement, pulling out all the family photos and mementos that Helena had banished. By morning, the house was starting to look like home again, but the biggest surprise was still waiting for me. 3 days later, Dad's lawyer called with news that would change everything forever. Maya, Mr. Peterson said over the phone, we need to discuss your mother's will. There's something in there that your father hasn't told you about yet. I looked at Dad, who was sitting across from me at the kitchen table. He looked nervous. What is it? I asked. Your mother left specific instructions about what should happen if you were ever mistreated by a step-parent or step-siblings. What kind of instructions? She set up a trust that would be activated if certain conditions were met. And based on the recordings from the other night and your father's testimony about the past 5 years, those conditions have been met. I don't understand. Maya, your mother left Helena a message. Would you like to hear it? Maya, your mother left Helena a message. Would you like to hear it? Mr. Peterson asked over the phone. I looked at Dad, my heart racing. Even 7 years after her death, my mother was still finding ways to protect me. Yes, I whispered. I want to hear it. Mr. Peterson's voice became solemn. Your mother recorded this message shortly before she passed away. She gave specific instructions that it should only be played if you were ever mistreated by a future step-parent. There was a pause, and then I heard something that made my breath catch in my throat. My mother's voice, weak but determined, filled the room through the speakerphone. If you're hearing this message, it means someone came into my daughter's life and tried to replace me. It means Maya has suffered emotional abuse at the hands of a person who was supposed to love and protect her. Tears were already streaming down my face. Dad reached across the table and took my hand. To whoever has hurt my daughter, Mom's voice continued, you made a terrible mistake. You thought Maya was alone. You thought she had no one to defend her. You thought you could erase me from her life and take everything that was meant to be hers. The voice got stronger, more determined. You were wrong. Mr. Peterson came back on the line. Maya, your mother established what's called a protective trust. Every time you were mistreated, every time your inheritance was threatened, every time someone tried to diminish your connection to her memory, it triggered additional financial provisions. What kind of provisions? I asked, still trying to process hearing Mom's voice again. Based on the documented abuse over the past 5 years, the stolen college fund, the donated belongings, the emotional manipulation, the trust has grown to over $8 million. I nearly dropped the phone. $8 million? Your mother was incredibly thorough. She predicted that someone might try to steal your college fund, so she set aside money to replace it with interest. She predicted someone might throw away her belongings, so she left funds to recreate everything. She even predicted that you might need therapy to recover from emotional abuse. Dad was staring at me in amazement. Sarah always was 10 steps ahead of everyone else. There's more, Mr. Peterson continued. The trust includes a provision for, how should I put this, consequences for the person who mistreated you. What kind of consequences? Your mother was a smart businesswoman, Maya. She researched Helena Blackwell before your father married her. Did you know Helena had been married 3 times before your father? I looked at Dad, who looked shocked. 3 times? Each marriage ended the same way. She would target wealthy, widowed men, manipulate them into marriage, isolate their children from previous relationships, and then try to inherit everything. Your father was victim number 4. Dad's face had gone pale. She targeted me specifically? I'm afraid so, Mr. Sterling. Your mother's private investigator documented everything. Helena had been watching your family for months before she accidentally met you at that coffee shop. The coffee shop where Dad always said he met Helena by chance, where she spilled coffee on him and they started talking. It had all been planned. Mom knew, I whispered. Your mother suspected something was wrong, but she died before she could prove it. However, she left instructions for the investigation to continue after her death. Maya, your mother's final gift to you isn't just money, it's justice. Mr. Peterson explained that Mom's private investigator had been quietly documenting Helena's behavior for 5 years. Every cruel comment, every stolen belonging, every manipulation had been recorded and cataloged. We have enough evidence to pursue criminal charges for fraud and elder abuse, he said. Helena knowingly entered into your father's life under false pretenses, stole money from a minor, you, and emotionally abused a child. But I'm 17 now, not a child, I said. The abuse started when you were 12. That's definitely child abuse. And the theft of your college fund was grand larceny. Dad was shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe I fell for it. Don't blame yourself, Mr. Sterling. Helena is a professional. She's done this before, and she would have kept doing it if not for your wife's foresight. 2 days later, Helena showed up at our house with a lawyer, demanding half of Dad's assets in the divorce. She walked into our living room like she owned the place, her expensive clothes and perfectly styled hair making her look like she was attending a business meeting instead of a family confrontation. Robert, she said coolly, my attorney has reviewed the prenup. The abuse clause is vague and unenforceable. I'm entitled to half of the marital assets. Her lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit, nodded smugly. My client has been the victim of false accusations. There's no proof of any abuse. Dad smiled calmly. Actually, Helena, there's something you should know. Maya has something to show you. I stood up, holding a tablet in my hands. Helena, I'd like you to meet someone. I pressed play, and my mother's voice filled the room again. Helena Blackwell. Mom's recorded voice said clearly, by the time you hear this, you've already shown your true nature. You've abused my daughter, stolen her inheritance, and tried to erase me from my own family. Helena's face went white. What is this? This is my mother's final message to you, I said, my voice steady and strong. The message she recorded specifically for the person who would try to hurt me. Mom's voice continued. I know who you are, Helena. I know about your previous marriages to Thomas Hartwell, David Morrison, and James Chen. I know how each of those marriages ended when you tried to steal from their children. Helena's lawyer looked confused, but Helena herself was starting to panic. I know you targeted my husband specifically after researching our family finances. I know you planned every accidental meeting, every sweet gesture, every manipulation. This is impossible, Helena whispered. She was dying. She couldn't have known. My mother was an artist, Helena, I said. But she was also a businesswoman, and she was protecting her daughter. The recording continued. By the time Maya hears this message, my private investigators will have documented everything you've done to her. Every cruel word, every stolen memento, every attempt to make her feel unwanted in her own home. Helena tried to stand up, but her legs seemed to give out. The trust I've established will ensure that Maya never needs anything from you or anyone else. But more importantly, it will ensure that you face consequences for what you've done. What? Consequences? Helena's lawyer demanded. Dad smiled and handed him a thick folder. Criminal charges for fraud, grand theft, and child emotional abuse. A civil lawsuit for the return of all stolen assets with damages. And a restraining order that keeps Helena away from Maya permanently. You can't prove any of this, Helena protested. Actually, I said, we can. I opened my laptop and showed them the screen. Mom's investigators have been recording everything for 5 years. Every conversation, every cruel comment, every theft. The screen showed a video montage. Helena throwing away my art supplies. Helena giving my mother's jewelry to Chloe. Helena convincing Dad to use my college fund for Austin's education. And dozens of other moments of cruelty and manipulation. But the most damaging video was from just a few days ago. Helena screaming at me that I would never be family, that everyone pitied me, that I was a burden Dad got stuck with. Helena's lawyer watched in horror as his client's true nature was displayed in high definition. My client will need to reconsider her position, he said quietly. No, Dad said firmly. There's nothing to reconsider. Helena gets nothing. She leaves now, and she never contacts Maya again. If she's lucky, Maya might decide not to press criminal charges. Helena looked at me with desperation in her eyes. Maya, please. I know I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? I interrupted. Helena, you spent 5 years trying to erase my mother from my life. You stole my inheritance, threw away her belongings, and made me feel worthless in my own home. I was protecting this family's future. You were protecting your own future, I said firmly. You never cared about this family. You only cared about the money. I stood up and walked over to where she was sitting. But here's the thing, Helena. My mother outsmarted you? From beyond the grave, she protected me better than anyone could have while alive. I handed her a piece of paper. What's this? She asked. It's a check, I said, for exactly $1,000. She stared at it in confusion. Mom left specific instructions. If someone tried to steal from me, they would get back exactly what they deserved. Nearly nothing, but just enough to ensure they couldn't claim they got nothing. Helena's hands were shaking as she held the check. $1,000 for 5 years of marriage to my father. $1,000 for trying to steal millions from a child. $1,000 for attempting to destroy a family. I leaned closer to her. Mom calculated it out. That's about 55 cents per day for the privilege of living in our house and trying to ruin our lives. Helena started crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. This isn't over, she said through gritted teeth. Yes, it is, Dad said firmly. Security will escort you out now. Your belongings are being shipped to your new address. You have no legal claim to anything in this house or in this family. As Helena and her lawyer were escorted out by security, she turned back one last time. You think you've won, Maya, but you'll always be alone. You'll never have a real family. I smiled at her, the first genuine smile I'd given her in 5 years. Helena, I already have a real family. I have a father who loves me, and I have a mother whose love was so strong, it protected me even after death. That's more family than you'll ever understand. The house looks completely different now. Dad and I spent months redecorating, bringing back Mom's artistic touch to every room. We replanted her garden, hung her paintings back on the walls, and filled the house with photos of our real family memories. I'm starting college in the fall. Art school, just like Mom always wanted. The full scholarship I earned will pay for tuition, and Mom's trust fund means I'll never have to worry about money. Austin had to leave Yale when Dad sued him for the stolen college funds. He's now working part-time and going to community college. Exactly what Helena had planned for me. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Helena tried to contact me once through social media, but Mom's trust had anticipated that too. I have a team of lawyers who handle all communication, and Helena's attempts at contact have resulted in additional restraining order violations. Chloe, surprisingly, reached out to apologize a few months ago. She said she always felt uncomfortable with how her mother treated me, but she was too scared to speak up. I appreciated her honesty, and we've been exchanging occasional messages. She's a good kid who got caught up in her mother's schemes. But the most amazing part of all this happened just last week. I was going through some of Mom's old art supplies that we'd recovered from storage when I found something incredible. A sealed envelope with my name on it, hidden inside her paint box. Inside was a letter dated just days before she died. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, it means my protections worked. It means you survived whatever challenges came after I was gone, and you're ready to start your real life. I want you to know that every provision I made, every plan I set in motion, was driven by one simple truth. You are the most precious thing. In my world, you are worthy of love, respect, and every opportunity life has to offer. Don't let anyone ever make you feel like you don't belong. This is your life, your family, your legacy. You are my daughter, and that makes you unstoppable. Paint the world with love, my beautiful girl. Make it as bright and colorful as you've always made my life. All my love, always and forever, Mom P.S. Check the bottom of my paint box. There's one more surprise. At the bottom of the paint box was a small velvet pouch. Inside was the most beautiful necklace I'd ever seen. A silver pendant with a tiny paintbrush and the engraving, "For Maya, who paints the world with love." I'm wearing it right now as I write this, sitting in Mom's art studio that Dad and I recreated in our house. The afternoon sun is streaming through the windows, illuminating canvases that are finally being used for their intended purpose again. Tomorrow, I start my summer art program. In the fall, I'll begin college. After that, who knows? Maybe I'll become a famous artist like Mom always believed I could be. Maybe I'll use my inheritance to help other kids who are going through what I went through. But one thing I know for certain, I'll never again let anyone make me feel like I don't deserve love, respect, or a place in my own family. Helena thought. She could erase me from my own story. She thought she could rewrite my family's history with herself as the hero and me as the unwanted burden. She was wrong about everything, because the truth is, some bonds are stronger than manipulation. Some love is more powerful than greed. And sometimes, a mother's protection can reach across the years to save her daughter when she needs it most. My name is Maya Sterling. I'm 17 years old, and this is the story of how my mother's love saved me from my stepmother's hatred. Helena told me I'd never be family. Turns out I was the only real family my father had left. And now, thanks to Mom's incredible foresight and unconditional love, I'm not just family, I'm free. The end.